Right, here we go. Happy Monday night, Knicks. Salute to Knicks Nation out there. CP from KnicksFanTV. If you're a diehard Knicks fan, if you're a diehard basketball fan, hit that subscribe button below and the notification bell so you don't miss anything. This is another episode of our NBA draft preview. In this series, we are highlighting some of the top prospects in the NBA draft, covering their strengths, their weaknesses, how they fit in with the Knicks, and so on and so forth as we prepare for the lottery and ultimately the draft. So tonight's guest, I have on with me, he goes by the name of Trevor Magnotti. He writes for The Step Back, and he also covers the Cleveland Cavaliers for FanSided. And on tonight's episode, we're going to talk a little bit about Tyrese Haliburton, man. This is a guy that a lot of you fans out there are very high on in terms of his prospects of coming to the Knicks. So, Trevor, how you doing tonight, man?
Doing good. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, good, man. Like I said, thanks for coming on and joining the show. So Tyrese Haliburton, man, talk to me a little bit about Halliburton. What is it that let's start with the strengths. So what is it that you like about Halliburton, and his prospects for the NBA?
Well, I think the big draw to Halliburton is the combination of his size and his passing ability. He is probably the best passer in the draft, especially in the half-court setting. Nico Mannion's a little bit better than him in transition. There are a couple other guys who are kind of comparable there, but in the half-court, out of the pick and roll, he is probably the best passer in the draft. And, he's a solid 6'5", a little bit of a light frame, but a guy who I think projects to be able to play a little bit of two-guard as well, and I think is going to have some usefulness on a team where he can maybe be a secondary ball handler and he can kind of play off of another primary creator. And I think he's going to be a really good option as kind of the primary distributor in an offense where he can kind of rely on maybe a higher volume scorer to be able to carry most of the load and be kind of the engine of the offense, so to speak. He's a guy who's going to keep your offense flowing when that guy's on the bench, and then when your primary guy is on the floor, he's going to help facilitate open looks and kind of feed off of the gravity that type of guy is going to have. He's also a pretty good defensive prospect, especially from a team defense perspective, and I think that combination of things leads to the belief that he's going to be a nice kind of glue guy for whatever team he ends up on. He's not going to be a guy who you can consider like a star level talent, but he's the type of guy who helps kind of hold everything together and helps turn star talent into winning basketball games through kind of his deployment and kind of making everything happen.
So you see him as sort of a guy that will play in sort of a two-guard lineup, not necessarily your primary floor general, but a guy that teams kind of like how the Cavaliers use Sexton and Garland. You kind of see Halliburton fitting in that role, more of an off-ball guard.
Yeah, I definitely see him in kind of the George Hill mold or the Lonzo Ball mold, where I think he's a guy who, if he is the one that you're asking to dictate things on offense, those lineups are going to struggle a little bit, but he will bring the ball up the floor, kind of initiate that first action that gets the ball into your star's hands, and then can kind of feed off of whatever develops after that. George Hill, I think, is the best example of kind of that type of player being utilized optimally in Milwaukee, because he's never being asked to bring the ball up with Bledsoe and Middleton and Giannis on the floor, but he's still playing the nominal point guard role, kind of making everything flow a little bit easier on Milwaukee's bench lineup. So I see Halliburton having the same type of future.
Conversely, what do you think he needs to work on in order to kind of maximize his potential at the next level?
I think there are a couple big things that he's going to have to address. One is the pick and roll defense. I think that he is a solid off-ball defender, but when you ask him to defend on-ball at the point of attack, especially in the pick and roll, his footwork isn't very good, his positioning isn't very good, and he doesn't seem to make the same type of reads that he's able to make off-ball. He doesn't diagnose plays as they develop as well as you would like, and I think that that's going to be a limiting factor for him early on, especially because he's going to be asked to play a lot at point guard and defend a lot at the point guard position. I think that's coachable. I don't see that as a huge issue, but I think that that's going to be an area where he's going to have to improve right away to be providing positive minutes off the bat. Offensively, I think there are a couple big issues that kind of hold me back from putting him as like a true like top 5 talent in this class. One is the pull-up jumper. He doesn't really have a good shooting foundation outside of stand still, catch and shoot, which is one of the things that he's very good at and makes him that good off-ball player, but he isn't really a great shooter off of the pick and roll, rising up in like the mid-range, and then he doesn't really have a pull-up 3-point shot that's really viable right now either, and that kind of is going to limit him from being that type of engine guy on offense that you can drive your offense behind. And then also, I think that his frame is going to limit him a little bit in terms of how versatile he's going to be. I don't know that he's going to be the greatest finisher at the NBA level, and I also don't know that he's going to really be able to defend up positions. Like if he gets switched onto a small forward, he's probably going to be a guy that gets bullied just because he is so thin at about 175 pounds. So adding strength, I think, is going to be big for him. Any improvement that they can get out, or whatever team drafts him can get out of his jumper, is going to be huge. And then defensively, just at the point of attack, getting more sound fundamentally in terms of positioning and the angles he takes defending in pick and roll.
That's interesting. And how about the free throw attempts were kind of low. I mean, only 2 attempts per game. What did you think about that, just in terms of his aggressiveness out there and being really, that dynamic guard?
Yeah, I think that speaks to one of the things that I actually like about Halliburton is he's a guy who understands his strengths and weaknesses. He has a very interesting profile. He's not a guy who is prototypical size and skill talent. He's a guy who, is a good finisher, but is not a great driver. He's a guy who's a good spot-up shooter, but isn't really a good pull-up shooter, which normally point guards are the opposite, right? Mm-hmm. They're usually more comfortable shooting off the dribble, less comfortable shooting from a standstill. So I think that he does a really good job of kind of realizing where he's good. You look at his shot attempts, and he's not taking a ton of attempts at the rim that are coming off of the pick and roll. Instead, most of those are coming off of baseline cuts and areas where he's going to be more at an advantage to be able to capitalize on the defense by getting an open look, and he really only takes those shots when it's open. Same thing with him in the mid-range, and with his 3-point attempts, those are almost all spot-ups. So I think in terms of the free throw aspect of things, I think it points more to that limitation that he has in terms of being kind of an engine on offense, and I think he's probably going to be a guy that is going to be a low free throw attempt generator, even though he's running a lot of pick and roll, which is kind of counterintuitive. But I think he's still going to be able to make that work because of how well he passes out of the pick and roll, and because of how good he is as a finisher. I think he's going to be able to build the confidence to be able to be a good finisher out of the pick and roll eventually. He just may not be a guy who's going to be giving you, the same type of 4, 5, 6 free throw attempts a game that you would expect from like a typical number 1 option point guard.
That's interesting stuff, man. And we're talking to Trevor Magnotti of the Step Back and also for Fansided, talking Tyrese Haliburton. Salute to Knicks Nation out there. Hit that thumbs up button for you boys and definitely subscribe to the channel. Trevor, we drafted RJ Barrett with the number 3 pick this past draft, and he's been having a pretty solid rookie season. I think going forward, from a Knicks standpoint, obviously we are in desperate need of a point guard right now, somebody that can really take the reins and help take this team to another level. I think the thing that is interesting is how that particular prospect may fit with RJ Barrett. We are seeing this season that kind of RJ's strengths is when he has the ball in his hands, and he's been kind of handling those playmaking duties. So I'm almost wondering if a guy like a Halliburton, being more of a low usage guy, is a better fit with an RJ compared to some of the other point guards in this draft. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I definitely like that. I think in terms of the point guard options for the Knicks, it's Halliburton and Tyrese Maxey are the two guys that I really like, and Killian Hayes as well. Although I kind of think of him more as kind of like a true combo guard, rather than like a typical point guard. I think that Halliburton would be a good fit because of some of the stuff that we've already talked about. I think the fact that he knows his limitations and he knows how to put himself in ideal situations to make the use of his talents really fits well next to RJ, who is a really good driver, who is a good scorer with the ball in his hands, but doesn't necessarily have the ideal vision that you want from like a primary creator in terms of being able to distribute. So I think having Halliburton on hand to kind of help keep everybody else happy, when he gets the ball, he can be an outlet off the catch on the perimeter for Barrett for driving kick stuff, and then he can kind of keep the offense running. And when teams are stunting towards Barrett to try to deny him the lane, he can be a guy who can kind of capitalize off of that extra space and be able to create opportunities for the rest of the team. Be able to create lob opportunities for Mitchell Robinson, be able to create corner open looks for guys like Dotson and Knox. So I think there are definitely pros to having those two guys together, because it's almost kind of like an opposites attract thing. You need a guy, or you've got a guy that maybe doesn't have the playmaking chops that you would want out of a number one option, but is a really, really good scorer with the ball. And then you put him next to a guy who has all of the playmaking tools in the world, but may not be able to go get 15 points for himself on a given night. I think that could end up working out really well, and it could end up being a really nice marriage. And that's why I like that, as well as having Halliburton on the defensive end. I mean, Barrett has his pros on the defensive end, but he's not going to be a guy who you can really build your defense around, particularly from a team defense perspective. And having Halliburton to be able to kind of guard off ball on the team's primary wing can help save Barrett a little bit as well.
True story, man. And perimeter defense is certainly an area that the Knicks are lacking. You had mentioned written in an article a couple of days ago that this was a very highly touted point guard draft in the beginning of the season. You have Cole Anthony, you have LaMelo Ball, you have Halliburton, Maxey, you have Killian Hayes, and so on. But seems like you kind of soured on this crop a little bit, man. So can you expound on that a little bit? What's your take on the overall crop of point guards in this year's draft?
Yeah, I think there's still talent in the point guard class. I don't say that to disparage everybody in the class. This isn't this isn't a group that doesn't have, where there's not going to be 2, 3, 4 NBA starting caliber point guards. I think those guys are there. I think the main thing is that some of the guys who came in very highly touted have disappointed. I mean, Nico Mannion has shown real flaws in terms of his ability to get to the rim and his willingness to try to drive, and he's almost entirely perimeter oriented. And at his size, I don't know that necessarily is going to be able to be a way that he can make success at the NBA level. Cole Anthony spent basically the first 3 months of the season where he was healthy, running into a brick wall every time he got into the paint. Kind of same story. I think there are a lot of point guards from kind of the top level that have disappointed a little bit. You can maybe add LaMelo Ball to that as well, and then you kind of throw that the other tier of kind of like the typical like college veteran guys. There are a lot of them this year, but a lot of them have significant flaws. Cassius Winston is very small. Malachi Flynn, another guy who's undersized and may have some difficulties translating to the next level. Miles Powell, great shooter, and really good offensive player who's really going to be kneecapped defensively. Devon Dotson, another point guard who kind of fits in the Halliburton mold, but he's 6'2". So how effective is he going to be with defense being his primary value? So I think that, that middle ground where it's like Halliburton, Kira Lewis of Alabama, Maxey, Hayes, I think there are going to be guys who are going to come out of this class and be really good. I just kind of worry, or I just kind of have seen, some of the options later in the draft, and then some of the guys who have been kind of thought of all year as top 5 potential picks kind of worry me a little bit in how they're going to translate. So that's kind of where I was coming from with that.
That's interesting, man. And then in terms of the Knicks, how would you rank it? Would it be Hayes, Halliburton, Maxey? How would you what would you say your 3 top point guard prospects in terms of fitting with the Knicks would be?
Yeah, I think that's my order. I think Hayes is the best fit just because he can kind of combine some of the stuff that we talked with Halliburton with legitimate off the dribble shooting talent, and he is a very good finisher and probably the most fundamentally sound team defensive prospect among the backcourt players. So I really like him as a fit there. Halliburton would probably be number 2 just because of his kind of willingness to be his willingness to fit into that type of role. I think it would be a very seamless transition. And then Maxey, I think, has the talent to be that, but he definitely strikes me as more of kind of like a long-term project. I think there's a lot of untapped potential with Maxey, and he's not getting the best usage so far at Kentucky when you consider their roster as a whole and kind of look at the way that he's been performing. But, there are some concerns with him. I think primarily is he as good of a shooter as we thought he was coming into the year. So I have my reservations about him. So I would slide Halliburton above Maxey in terms of fit for a team like the Knicks that is trying to make next steps forward in building a winning culture and not so much looking for just raw talent in the way that they maybe have in years past.
Halliburton had he had a season cut short with the fractured wrist. Do you see that impacting his workouts, in terms of shooting and everything? Could that potentially impact his draft stock if teams aren't able to see him shoot?
I don't necessarily believe so because I think that he has made significant strides over the past year as a shooter. Last year, as a freshman, he was a guy who rarely ever took anything but wide open 3-point attempts off the catch. And I think that his work over the summer with the under 19 teams at the FIBA World Championships, he really started to come into his own as a pull-up shooter. And this year has shown a little bit more and been able to build on that way. So I think that he's shown enough progression in his 3-point shot that you can buy it a little bit more. And as far as the injury itself impacting his shooting, this isn't an injury that really does impact that in the way that maybe like a thumb injury would, because it doesn't really change the release pattern at all. It doesn't really change the spin that the player's going to get on the ball. This is something that is gonna heal reliably and shouldn't be an issue for him. I think him shooting at workouts is going to be something that teams are definitely going to want to see, but I think that he's shown enough that somebody is going to buy his shot, even if he's not able to display that for teams. And he's probably still kind of firmly locked into going somewhere in the back half of the top 10 or early in the teens. I don't think that he would drop much more than that if he wasn't ready to go for workouts.
Okay. And once again, salute to everybody in the chat. We are talking to Trevor Magnotti. He's a writer for the Step Back and also covers the Cleveland Cavaliers for FanSided. Trevor, is there a consensus number 1 pick in this draft? Is it Edwards? Do we need to see more of the NCAA tournament? Could Obi Toppin, could his stock, rise all the way up there? Could Killian Hayes' stock rise all the way up there? What do you think? Who's going to be at the top of the heap when it's all said and done?
Man, I don't know. This draft reminds me so much of 2013, where even up to the final day, we had no idea who the number 1 pick was going to be. I think it's a similar situation with this class. Nobody has really asserted themselves as the de facto number 1 prospect in the way that we have seen so many times in the past few years. I think that Edwards has a good shot if he is able to kind of round into or display that he's more than what he showed at Georgia during workouts. He's the guy I would bet on, but I think it all is going to depend on who has that number 1 pick, because I could definitely see a team buying into LaMelo Ball's talent and being able to, and being able to kind of believe that they're going to be able to maximize what he is, even with all the distractions that inherently are probably going to come with him. I can definitely see a team trying to throw a curveball and maybe taking a guy like Onyeka Okongwu, number one, or Killian Hayes, number one, or even Obi Toppin, number one. I think it's all going to depend on who has that number one pick and how that team is feeling.
Yeah.
The one feeling I've consistently gotten from, mainstream draft coverage and also talking to people inside the business is everybody evaluates this draft class differently from person to person, from scout to scout, from team to team.
True.
And I think that's going to make for a wild next couple months as we try to hash out who's going to end up going number one in this class.
Absolutely, man. Well, Trevor, man, I definitely appreciate all the insights. As I said before we went live, I definitely want to have you back on as we go deeper into the tournament and some of these guys show some more tape. Let the people know where they can find you, man. Where are the best places to find some of your work?
Yeah, so you can follow me on Twitter at Illegal Screens. You'll get a lot of kind of just general musings about the draft class in general there. I don't do a ton of prospect-specific scouting work on my Twitter account, but more just kind of throw stuff out, talking about the class in general. You can find my specific writing at the Step Back. I'll be doing a Xavier Tillman scouting report probably sometime this week and getting that out. And then you can find it. You probably don't have much Cavs fan crossover here, but my consensus or my own personal big board gets posted once a month at Fear the Sword, and that's kind of how you can track my individual thoughts on the draft. I have another draft writer at the Step Back, Jackson Frank, who we can kind of combine our board at the Step Back, so it is not mine alone. What you'll see over there, if you want to find my stuff specifically, that's at Fear the Sword.
Okay. Well, Trevor, man, thanks again, and we'll definitely talk down the road, man. Thanks a lot, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, take care. That was Trevor Magnotti. Trevor was just on talking a little Tyrese Haliburton, man. What did you guys think of Trevor's comments? Leave a comment in the chat. Leave a comment on this video. He said Halliburton, looks more of a role player. Probably more of an off-ball guard in a two-guard lineup. Nothing too crazy, nothing too dynamic. He's not going to be your star floor general for you, but somebody that knows their role. Obviously the catch and shoot threes are certainly his strengths. Trevor said his shot. How will the jumper translate at the NBA level? How will that jump shot translate at the NBA level? Trevor also mentioned his off-ball defense. His off-ball defense is pretty solid, but how will his pick-and-roll defense improve at the next level as well? So some interesting insights, man. Interesting insights. As I said, the purpose of this series, we're going to bring in people who cover these guys a lot more extensively than we can and be able to educate us on these prospects. And listen, like you said, you're going to hear a lot of different opinions on these guys. These guys are all being scouted differently, but listen, that's just one opinion from somebody who's covered these guys. You let me know your thoughts. Hit that thumbs up button for your boys. Not going to take any calls tonight because I wanted to keep it a short show. But we will be back tomorrow night. Knicks versus Wizards, sorry. Talking a little bit more draft and, of course, Knicks versus Wizards post-game. Michael Parker, number one fan of the show, says LaMelo is the best point guard in the draft, period. He said, that being said, if the basketball gods drop us to 10, then take Halliburton unless we trade up. All right, appreciate the comment, Michael Parker. Definitely appreciate it. Also want to thank Reggie Jones for the super chat. Sends us a $10 super chat. Reggie, I appreciate you. Remember, for some of you new guys, this show will be available in audio podcast format. Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Amazon, Alexa. If you can't watch it on YouTube, you can't watch it on video, it's always going to be available in audio podcast format shortly after the show goes off the air. So salute to my cab drivers, my Uber drivers, my truck drivers, everybody on the road listening. Appreciate it, man. Appreciate all the support. Who should we cover next? Who do you guys want to cover next? We heard about Cole Anthony already. We heard LaMelo Ball. We heard RJ Hampton. Tonight we did Tyrese Haliburton. Who's the next prospect you guys want to hear about? Let us know in the comments. Let us know in the chat, and we'll go get somebody to cover that player, man. Definitely. Before I go, Chick George, appreciate it. Alex Collins, appreciate it, man. Me and Alex linked up and grabbed some lunch, man. Appreciate that. Have a safe trip back to Ireland, bro. Gay University, how you doing? Craig Williams, a lot of OB topping in here. A lot of OB guys, a lot of OB fans in here. I think OB's stock is gonna, I think that thing is gonna rise up, man. Especially as Dayton goes through the tournament. I think OB stock is gonna rise. I've been watching Denny. I've been watching Maccabi Tel Aviv. Starting to watch some of their games. I'm gonna be watching some more Killian Hayes as well as we get into it. It's intriguing. It's gonna be intriguing, man. See where we end up. Who else? Emmanuel C says Killian Hayes. We got Kyra Lewis. Anthony Edwards says Chen. A lot of polarizing opinions, man. A lot of polarizing opinions. So, like I said, we're going to keep talking about it. And as we shift the momentum from the season to the draft, let's see what happens, man. Let's see what happens. But in the meantime, hit that thumbs up button for your boys. Number one show for the fans, by the fans. CP from KnicksFanTV. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Definitely appreciate Trevor for providing those valuable insights. As I said, hit that thumbs up button for your boys. I'm going to show you guys how to do just that. It just goes a long way in helping us promote the channel. And as you see here, this is tonight's show on the phone, right? So you see the chat up here. Hit that X. Once you hit that X, you're going to see the thumbs up. Hit that thumbs up. Also, share these videos. Sharing these videos goes a long way to help us promote the show. Share it on Facebook. Share it on Twitter. Text your friend, whether they're a Knicks fan, basketball fan. If you enjoyed this show, text a friend, text a colleague, family member. Let them know about the show as well. The more people you bring in, the more callers we have, the better guests that we have, and the show continues to grow. It's a grassroots movement. So, like I said, I'm going to do my part. You do your part. And definitely appreciate everybody for joining. We'll be back tomorrow night. Knicks versus Wizards post-game around 10:30 Eastern time, man. So keep it locked, KnicksFanTV. Subscribe to the channel and the notification bell. And I'll see you guys tomorrow night. Peace.